Hello, I'm Chris Solo, and welcome to the Fabled 42, where we build community through friendship, gaming, and chaos. You're watching Creating Better Villains here at GaryCon. This is our first event of this weekend for GaryCon Autumn Revel. So before we get started, we're going to dive into some really quick announcements. A few things. As always, we are Vorpal powered. Our video and audio displays, player indicators, digital dice, and zoom features on the battle map are all brought to you by Vorpal Board. Everything that you see that's 3D printed on all of our streams is brought to you by Griffin Co. And don't forget to check out our Patreon, and that's how we are in business. That's how we are able to create more shows for all of you amazing people, is through our Patreon. So please take a look at our Patreon as well. Also, there is a really cool GaryCon Bazaar. I will drop that link here in a bit. But go ahead and check it out. There's a lot of cool merch. I got this from the other GaryCon from being a game master. It was really fun. It feels very nice. But you guys don't hear me talk all the time, so let's go into our panelist introductions. Diane.
Hi guys, my name's Diane Hall. You can find me at the Pretty DM on Instagram and Twitter, and you can find me here on Fabled 42. I play in the Wednesday games. I am DMing 2 all-female one-shots next Friday and Saturday, and then starting on the 19th, every Monday, I will be DMing my homebrew campaign, The Legends of Shalagal. Very excited for that.
Nice. I guess I'll go next. Hey guys, I'm GW. You can find me on IG and Twitter under GW005. That is 2 B's and 2 zeros. You can also find me here on special events like this one and other kind of like one-shot games and some other things coming down the pipeline. So keep an eye out for that. Also, you can find me or my voice on Clarion Dawn. You can go to clariondawn.com, and it's a sci-fi drama audio podcast. It's really fun, really different. I'm new to kind of like podcast myself, but once I like got in there and started doing the thing and started hearing kind of like our project coming together, I was like, oh my god, more. So
it's so good.
Oh, thank you. So yeah, glad to be here.
Nice. Hi, I'm Tim Carlson. You can find me at Blackwater D&D on Instagram and Twitter, or at Tim W. Carlson on both as well. And I run the game for Blackwater D&D. We play every Saturday night, and then we also host a kind of like a lore show because we started mid-campaign. We started streaming, so we have kind of a lore show on Monday nights called Chatwater. That's really fun, and yeah, that's kind of about it. We run monthly one-shots as well that kind of rotate through, have a bunch of different guests and things like that. Yeah.
Wonderful. Hi, everyone. I'm Renee Beauregard. You can find me at Dragon Rock, R-O-C, RPG on Twitter and Facebook. You can also find me at Dragon Rock RPG Design on Instagram. We just recently launched our Icons of Horror D&D 5e supplement, where you can play subclasses based on iconic horror villains. You can find that on DM's Guild. Just search up Icons of Horror, and that should bring that up. I am also the dungeon referee and host of the Mythical Melee, which will be having its final show on October 18th, the last day of UkadorCon, and you can see that at 3 p.m. on October 18th.
And I will be the winner! I hope. God, I'm going to for that. I said that.
Out loud. Yeah, we heard it.
Yeah.
Chris is talking, but his lips are just moving.
You're so considerate, but you screwed yourself.
I did. Every time. I'm done.
My name is April Hill. You can find me at _Creator on Instagram. I play an Air Genasi wizard on Realms of Ukador Season 2 on Wednesdays on the Fabled 42 network. I will also be running a Fallout-themed D&D campaign starting on IRL Reclamation Day, November 14th. So that's coming up pretty soon. So super excited.
Love it.
So excited.
Well, thank you all for your introductions. I'll introduce myself because we do have a lot of new people in the chat. I am Chris Solo. I am the founder of Fabled 42. We started off as a small group of friends creating the world of Ukador, which is our pilot show, which is the Wednesday show. We did finish season 1 this past August, right, GW? I think so.
Yeah.
GW was one of my first players of all of this. So we have started season 2. GW has jumped into the DM seat, and these two lovely ladies have joined the campaign to fill in some very big shoes. But you guys have created your own shoes anyway. Yes, so here at Fabled 42, we are a community-driven network. We have 6 homebrew weekly shows. We have several talk shows, and we're constantly creating new things. Next week on Wednesday is the 2nd annual Ukador Con. You guys can check out our website for more information about that. I do still need to post the calendar. But there's a lot of really exciting things that are happening. We have a lot of new shows coming up. We have our series finale of Wizards of Ukador on Monday. We have the next episode of Realms of Ukador on Wednesday. The 3rd episode of Rime of the Frost Maiden. So I have taken the Rime of the Frost Maiden adventure book, kind of tweaked a few things, threw it into the world of Ukador, and here we are. So lots of very exciting things, but we're not here to talk about all this. We're here to talk about creating better villains. GW has met some of my finest villains that I have created, but I want to hear about the best villains that you all have created. Also, anybody in the chat, if you want to have you any questions for any of us in the panel, just make sure to tag myself or Chills in the chat, and then I'll pick up those questions and I will field them when we get a break. But so quick, fast, in a hurry. So what are some of the best villains you've created? I know, Tim, you've been put on the spot because your wife said you create some awesome villains. No pressure. But yes, let's hear about some of the best villains you guys have created.
Yeah, we just recently, I would say about a month ago, finished a big arc with a kind of a keystone villain named Velsum, who was tied into a few characters' backstories. He was essentially the king of the city, and one of the characters had been working for him, kind of being sent out, getting relics and magic items, and that was kind of his backstory. And one of the other characters, her nickname was Spooky Pants because she had these spooky pants. And so it turned out that this king was actually a lich, and he had been ruling the city for thousands of years. But essentially he knew the party very, very well at this point because he had interacted with a few of them. And it turned out Spooky's pants were one of his phylacteries. So she was a necromancer, so all of her magic had this kind of yellow, like tainted magic. And as like they got more powerful, that yellow magic started to kind of like burst through. And he actually, there was a coronation. They were in this other kingdom, and they know the queen very well. She's married to one of the player characters, and he came to the coronation, and of course, so he's like in the middle of this huge kind of banquet, and they're all there, and he starts talking to the one character, and at this point they've kind of figured out that he was not on the level, and he was like a packed lich that had formed a bond with Tharizdun, and he was trying to unleash Tharizdun through the abyss. And so it was great because one of the best moments was that like they started to put things together, but then they had this great moment at this banquet where he talked to them, but they couldn't attack him. Like it was all these dignitaries were around. It was like they were sort of put in this position. And then he basically was like to the character Kokanee, he was like, I need you to come meet me on the ship. I have to talk to you about something. And he agreed to meet him alone. And the player had built in this mechanism with Kokanee where he had a plate in his heart that essentially was controlled by Velsum, and he could kill him at any point. He gave me this Chekhov's gun. So I was like, they were on the ship and he took his heart. And the players were all close by because they knew this was going to be super dangerous. And then they had to go and rescue him and all this stuff. So it built this whole thing up, and they had this big fight in the city, and they defeated him, but he came back through the pants while they were in. The necromancer had created a magnificent mansion for them to sleep in a few nights later. and he ambushed them in the mansion. But because he was tied to her magic, he was able to control the mansion around them. So I was able to kind of switch up the fight, and yeah, it went really, really well. It was like, and one of the players got stuck outside. Yeah, it was wild.
And you guys don't trust me as it is, but if I ever make your pants attack you, like that's it. That's game breaking. Not trusting.
Yeah.
Like
Everything's a mimic.
Everyone's just not wearing pants anymore in games.
Don't give him any ideas.
It was nice. It was good.
That's the first nudist Fabled 42 campaign.
Oh my God. That's bravo. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
April, how about you?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. The best one is actually yet to come. I am in love with the end game that I have for you guys for the Fallout campaign.
Please, just go ahead and tell us.
I won't even go there.
Everyone can take it out, and you can just tell me.
I'm so excited about it. But, I mean, it's not as awesome as Tim's, but I love when players give me daggers. When they,
I always try to give daggers. Yeah, always.
Yes, like open-ended.
Yeah.
Open-ended parts of their backstory and stuff, and I don't really know what my father's doing and stuff like that, or bad blood with one of their family members or somebody from their past.
Some of your questions after my backstory makes so much more sense now.
Oh my God. That's amazing.
That's my method. I love tying in backstory.
No, I do the same thing. So yeah.
So I once took one of my players' father, and I made him. He didn't know where his father had been. His mom had died long ago. His dad actually ended up being this cult leader. And that this one of the other members of the party, he had been in this cult for a while, and then he got out. So he had they were all tied in together. It was really awesome. That player is actually the player that I made his dad, the bad guy. Had no idea.
That guy too. It's great.
He had no idea. So he's walking into the final. I mean, I left breadcrumbs, but he's walking into this final battle. He goes around the corner, and I describe who he's seeing. Oh, and he's deathly afraid of spiders, and so of course this person has a spider staff. He looks around the corner, and there's spiders, and he's like, and then he goes back around the corner and tells everybody, so that's my dad in there. And then he's like, I don't know what to do. It was so great. It was just they were all like a, oh crap moment. And then it was beautiful. I love tying in backstories and making,
nice.
that's my favorite thing to do. I'm sorry, GW. The very first the very first thing I ever thought about for the Realms of Ukador, and I'll do really quickly.
Always bring this up.
I always do, because it was my favorite twist of all twists, but also favorite villain combination, and you'll understand why in a second. Really, really fast description. GW gave me one of the best backstories I've ever received ever. I can't pronounce any of his family names. I did get better. I got pretty good with pronouncing at least their first name, not the 7 names that followed after each one. But
yes.
He had this amazing backstory. But the problem that I was struggling with when I was looking at everyone's backstories is he didn't have a motive. Like, why is he going to save the world, right? Like, he's got everything he needs.
Quick interjection. My character thing was that his journey was just kind of to travel the world, because he was a kind of traveler, and since he was a druid, to kind of get closer, have a stronger bond with nature. But that's it.
But my vision for his story arc is very similar to Daenerys Targaryen, right? Start off like this with not a lot of power, have something terrible happen, and then he turns into what he turned into at level 20, being the beast that he was, with 75 bats every 5 seconds. I'm still not bitter about all the bat summoning, but it's cool. But so really quick, GW had this amazing, elaborate backstory. All of these family members, everyone was alive and happy and well. Okay. So they get to the first city, episode 1. At the end of episode 1, they did this quest, and they go and meet the Duke, and the Duke brings out his wife, the Duchess. And the Duchess is Jadobi's youngest elven sister. He was blown away. Immediately, episode 1, he meets his elven sister, and then I took the liberty of making 2, a niece and a nephew, and he was like, oh my god, and this was this huge thing. 10, 15 episodes go later, they go and meet a friend of ours who is Bo. He played Ted the Fighter, who is this Kermit the Frog sounding guy, glasses, skinny guy wearing his dad's armor, who was the personal guard of the Duke and the Duchess. We all loved him. We all loved Bo as just a person, but we loved his character. The fans loved him. His sister loved him. The Duke hated him, right? So there was this weird strife. But they did a couple episodes, and it was really cool. A couple weeks later, they're fighting the Trevel, which are my kind of evil cultists. And during the fight, GW is fighting off the cultists and protecting his sister. Ted is fighting off the cultists and protecting his sister, and the fight continues and continues. And then GW hears... GW is his character's name. GW hears Ted say... hears his sister say Jadobi, and he turns around, and Ted has a dagger in her heart. And this dagger was already made. We found out about the dread weapons previously, foreshadowing that if you're attacked or killed with a dread weapon, it steals your soul and you cannot be resurrected ever. Ted had one of those in her heart. He cast a monologue spell where no one failed the save, so they were like frozen or moving very slowly as he did his little speech. The funny part is this is back when we all used to play together. Bo was sitting right next to GW. And he kind of pulls up his binder and he does this thing. GW just looked at the ceiling and was just like angry. Eric ripped off his glasses and threw them on the table and turned red and looked at me. He's like, what the fuck? Like everybody was angry. And I was like, yes. But so Bo does his thing. And it was really cool though. So Bo does his thing and he was a little too OP, and he ended up, starting off the first main antagonist of the whole story was a PC. They fought him for a second, then he got out of dodge, and there was, 10,000 orcs outside waiting to storm the castle. So, my mistake was I didn't let them kind of sit with that emotion for too long. But the follow-up of that is, and this is my favorite part of it, and you'll find out why in a second. So in our studio, whenever I would go get the battle set, I would go behind my DM wall, grab a set, and set it on the table. So they were fighting these undead things in this town, and then they saw some sketchy-looking shadow around the corner, and it ended up being the Duke of the sister that has been killed, and he is now an Oath of Vengeance paladin, and he had one of those black arrows in his side, and he's like, "What are you doing here?" And then they had a quick conversation, and I described this very large shadow creature coming from the distance, and I went behind the wall to get it, and as I went behind the wall, Bo, who they didn't know was in the house, came out and sat in my seat as Ted the traitor now. The table lost it. I sat next to GW and played the Duke. So I played with my players to fight this villain. That was my favorite moment of the Realms of Ukdor. And one of my favorite villains, because it was not just me. It was a PC in there with me.
That's awesome.
And GW didn't talk to me for about 2.5 weeks after I did kill a sister. Point of order.
This is true. This is all true. A quick thing of one of... my favorite baddies that I've ever made. Now, I'm a new DM, so mostly I've been DMing for like 7 months or so, but most of my things are one-shots. So kind of like the big bad or, the main event is something big, ugly, and it's just one that rips your face off. But for other stories, because I've been, creating stories since I was young, I love drawing my characters, making stories, blah, 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 blah. One of my favorite villains that I made was a mutant. It was one of my mutant stories. And he was, of course, the antagonist to the hero. The hero was kind of feral, claws, electric power, stuff like that. So it's like, okay, what could challenge this kind of Spider-Man, Black Panther-esque electric-powered hero? And I was just like, all right, this guy's strong, whatever. Like, I want his opposite to be weak. I want his opposite to be timid. I want his opposite to be broken. So this mutant, who was a latent mutant, he grew up paraplegic, picked on by everyone, all the things, bad part of the town, broken home, all of the above. And later he found out he could use his mind to mess with technology. And it just got stronger because all that he could really do was just type on the computer, go to his happy place, and the computer started talking back to him, and everything started talking back to him, and he found out that he was a technopath, and
Okay.
he learned how to kind of start uploading himself onto the net and kind of come back and kind of wade into the water, with your powers, see what you can do, come back. But every time he would do that, he would come back less of a person. Every time
like Livewire, kind of.
Similar.
Livewire,
Similar. For him, the wires would go into his flesh. He was a living port, basically. And so, the more he started losing himself, the more his mind started to, kind of shift to be non-human and more kind of strategic and all of the above. And he started thinking back on all the bad things that happened to him, the people that picked on him, pushed him over, kicked him in the street, all the above. And as his power grew, he found that he could change all of that. He didn't have to be scared anymore. He didn't have to be timid. And he eventually learned how to make, with his mind, this metal suit that was just kind of like this huge, bulky, metal, Iron Man, Hulk Crusher suits. And the suit had 3 kind of dog heads, and his name was Cyberus. I wanted to mix Cerberus with something, just a cyber effect, and I kind of want to mess with it because he likes dogs. And basically what he does is he sits in the suit, just cross-leg and everything, palms open, and all these things kind of shoot into him, these wires, and he controls the suit. But not only does he control the suit, he just builds and continuously with his mind and learns more. So he can make his own army. He can literally pull soldiers out of metal walls and stuff like that. So he was my favorite super villain because he was very, very broken, very timid, and he had that point where everything changed and he lost himself more and more. So he is one of my favorite villains that I've made.
That's so cool.
Yeah, that's rad.
Does anyone else want to share any of their villains before we go on to the next question?
Yeah.
I can. I think the last time we talked about.
Yeah. Go ahead, Diane.
Okay. I think the last time I talked about a villain, I'm gonna change my villain to a more recent villain for my home game. Tied into one of my players' backstories, his family fled from their ancestral home part of the world to a new part, and he lost his family to what he thought were devils, but were actually demons disguising themselves as devils. And that made his character turn to necromancy because he thought his family was dead and he wanted to learn more about death and try and bring his family back. And he found this necromancer's book with all of these old things from his family. And that's why he started learning the necromancy, spells and stuff. And so he was trying to find the woman who wrote the book, thinking that, she was going to help him and mentor him to find his family, learn more. Well, turns out because I'm a demented DM and I take backstories and twist them.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, okay, well, his family took the book from her, stole it. She wants the book back and will do anything to get it back. And she is a lich, right? So he waltzes into her castle and she goes on this whole thing about how his grandparents or great grandparents like ruined their town and like killed this king that she was like romantically involved in and stole her book and like all of these things. And she like attacked them with the Draco Lich. They almost died, but a cleric saved them with her deity. But yeah, what's great about having a lich as a villain is, unless if you get that phylactery, whether it's on pants or in some other situation, they can keep coming back. She's actually still kind of technically a villain, but they don't know where she is yet.
Ooh, I like it. Secrets.
So we do have 2 questions up, but I do want to hear from Renee about your favorite villain.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. The villain I'm gonna.
He just wrote a whole little thing about.
Yeah, about creating villains.
So many.
Like creating characters as villains, more or less. So check it out on DM's Guild. So my villain I want to talk about is a dragonborn sorcerer named Izek. Izek fell in love with a young half-elven man, and his parents didn't exactly feel that was appropriate. So they exiled him from both their town and their family, and did it pretty violently after they openly drew and quartered the love of his life in the middle of the street. So slowly but surely, he began to accrue his own power, and eventually came back to the town, erected his own wizard's tower, supplanted his family, and then brought them to his dungeon. And then, after accruing all his power, kept them in there for eons. Which then created the one-shot that this character is based around, called Izek's Vanishing Oubliette.
Ooh,
so
I like
essentially, every 100 or so years, the tower reappears. And essentially that's when Izek has the time to get back out and try to take over again. And when the tower reappears, the town calls on adventurers to come back to try and stop it from happening, because it seems like nobody can actually stop it. It just continues to recur because of some reason. So yeah, I love Izek and what he like represents for LGBT villains, because you don't see, like, I don't see them done right or with the right like drive, in my personal opinion. Like using the actual act of being oppressed by both family and community, you give the villain a reason to be the way that they are. Instead of just like, oh well, they're evil and they suck. So
you have to have a reason.
Right? So yeah, no, Izek does it for me.
Awesome. Those are all amazing villains, and I don't want to play in any games with you guys.
Yeah, you do.
Please.
No, I love it. I love a good villain, because that makes it real. And you guys know with my games, like I draw emotion. So like having a villain who's just a villain because he's a villain, that's boring, right? There's no. Why do I care about the villain? Like having the dilemma like you guys dealt with Realms 1, where you're like, I don't know if I want to kill this villain. Like I feel bad for them. I mean, we still killed him, but whatever. Or Riha, with the outcome with Riha was totally different too. So I like that. That I love the stories that make it all juicy, which makes it like, hey guys, we just did a campaign for 3 years and we just killed something that was like, like that. That's what I don't want. I want something like that. It gives you that satisfaction.
You definitely want that conflict within the party to be like, we have to talk about this. I don't feel right about doing this. I love villains that you can connect with.
Sympathizing a little bit with that villain is perfect.
Yeah. Or killing baby trolls and realizing you shouldn't have, and then you became the villain and immediately fixed the situation. We won't talk about that. There's a really awesome question from Daddy Dragon. Have any of you
yeah.
ever created a villain that gets killed too fast during a campaign and had to make up a new one on the fly to continue the story?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
actually,
He did that.
this will resonate for my wife who is on our balcony listening to this right now. It was her mother. They actually, I wrote a campaign for my work friends, my sister, and my wife, and my wife gave me this like really open-ended but kind of interesting backstory about how her mother was like super serious all the time about everything, and her brother went off to go and find himself, I guess, and then never came back, and then blamed her for him not coming back. And so she was tired of her mother constantly telling her that it was her fault, and so then she left eventually too. um, and then the backstory for her mother was that like she eventually turned that blame on their father and was just like, our kids are gone because you never stopped them and you wouldn't put your foot down, and you didn't take anything as seriously as I did. And so eventually she killed him, and then made a pact with Baphomet. And eventually like she was going to be the big bad. But what happened was they got to her a keep that she had been putting herself in, or holding herself up in, and instead of going through all of the encounters I had set like inside the keep and up the clock tower that she had, they instead scaled the keep with a grappling hook and then climbed the clock tower and skipped straight to the boss fight. And then like they had everything they needed, they had all the spell slots, they had all the HP, and it wasn't going to take them any time, or it wasn't going to give her enough time to get out. So at the end of the day I was just like, okay, so now I'm going to have to figure out something else. But that was what it was for me.
I commend you for allowing them to go through with that crazy, be creative and have a crazy idea and let them go through it and not just kind of like be like, nope, you're going in the front door. Like, I commend you for that.
Yeah.
Exactly. Reward that creativity.
Absolutely, 100% every time.
I mean, I've had my players join the big bad, who I thought was going to be the big bad, and then they joined them.
Oh.
Interesting.
All of them, or just one?
It was one of my players' dad, who his dad like ran away when he was a child, and he wanted to like find his dad, and so I had his dad be like the leader of this cult to Bane. And he like finds his dad, and his dad like is like, you know, like a dad, like when you meet your dad, like after you haven't ever met your dad, and they're like, oh, you know, you're great, and you know, now we can rule the world together. And he like gave him this cloak that I now realize is like way too OP, but I was a new DM, so I didn't know. And I was
That's
like,
why you get Reha. 9,000 pounds.
I was totally expecting them to be like, no, he's a leader of an evil cult. Like, I'm not going to side with him. I'm not going to take this. And they did. He did take it. And so then it turned into like kind of an evil campaign where they were like the leaders of this cult, and like they sided with Bane, and it was this whole thing. And I had to like totally reshape my campaign because I was like, yeah, he's going to be the big bad guy. And they did eventually kill him because he got jealous. But, you know, it's...
Yeah, your players create some of the best plot points of your story. Yes. So trust your players. So I just have real quick 2 cents, and I want to hear what everybody else has to say because I have to also say another announcement. So to answer the question as vaguely and as quickly as possible, you will live in a very high... Most of the games are in a high fantasy setting. Your players can resurrect themselves. There is no reason why the big bad they just killed can't be resurrected too. Maybe by the bigger bad, maybe by an alternate big bad. So you can always bring them back. That's just my quick 2 cents. However, our time as far as GaryCon's allotted time for the panel is up. So go ahead and check out, where's it at? The Fires of Heresy with DM Jenny Loveday. I just go ahead and put the GaryCon link in there. So go ahead and jump over there. We're gonna keep going because we still have questions that I want to make sure I honor and answer. So make sure to come back. We're 54 minutes into the stream, so come back and you can pick up where you left off on our VOD, which will be available right when the stream is over. But thank you all so much for your support in watching the show. And we'll see you guys later on today with how to play in Vorpa board, and then our big event with the game later on today at 6 p.m. Pacific. So we'll see you guys later. But to continue the conversation, any other points for your big bad dies unexpectedly?
No, I have not gone through that just yet. Even with one of my last one shots I did with Elisa Teague, Abria, and Ryan Omega, like they paralyzed the big bad hold person.
Oh, that was the game I was in. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was
and
fun.
they just wrecked it. Now, I did have a pretty good HP cap. Yeah. But they were really like decking that thing hard, and they were, of course, rolling crits and then double damage and then this and that. And I was like, I'm glad I gave you all the HP I did. Jeez. But besides that, I have not yet encountered something that goes so quick that I'll have to either make something up or add more to it. But I have heard many times that happens.
Yeah, that is the thing is, if it's your big bad, I would say don't feel bad about adding HP on the fly. Maybe they have extra spell slots. Like, they don't have to fit into that cookie cutter character sheet because they're the big bad. Like, they are what they are for a reason. I've had to learn that my last campaign, my big bad, who I'd worked for 2 years on her fleshing out and backstory. I had a new player who, I'm just going to say it, I'm glad he didn't stick around for the next campaign after that. He just kind of really made the final battle shit show. But I was flustered, and I wasn't doing what I could have done to I was looking at her character sheet oh, well, this is what she can do. And I needed to step out of the character sheet and be well, she's the big bad. She can do all these things too.
Yeah.
So,
well, I guess going back to my original point was, if your big bad is this pivotal thing that has to go the distance, you have to have an out for that big bad, right? You have to have, whether it's a vampire and they turn into mist form, which you can't really attack and it goes away, cool. They plane shift at 1 HP, when GW and them fought her.
I was just thinking that. I ran after her.
This is Riha in her dragon form. She makes Tiamat look like a kitty cat. She has 3,600 hit points and does far more damage than Tiamat or anything else does. So they fought her in 2 episodes. But there was a point, because there's story points, and the final fight was her in her god form. So this was the pre-fight, right? So she had to get out of dodge, right? And they wrecked her. They wrecked her so much to where we changed locations because she was trying to flee, and then went to her lair, and they fought her some more. And then when she died, she turned into that mist form, which is actually part of Tiamat's inherent traits. So the mist form was leaving. GW, you were on a bat, weren't you?
I was on a couple of them. I was flying on a horde.
Yeah, so he was flying after the mist form as she got right through a portal at the last second, which was exciting to watch. But I had that out already, predetermined. Same thing with Victor. The first time you guys fought Victor, he was a vampire. He was Dracula, so he already inherently had an out. But you do notice that a lot of those really big bads already have a predetermined out in there. They have they can cast plane shift inherently once a day. Anything that's in the character's sheet that is once a day, that's the oh shit, I gotta get out of dodge spell, right? That's the you all stay here, I'm gonna go. That's what that's for.
Yeah, they wouldn't fight to the death if they didn't have to.
Yeah. And even if they didn't have that out in their sheet, let's say you're just kind of be 3'd up, maybe a a weaker monster, but you like the way they look and you want to have them as the big bad, you can always alter things and just always have a plan B, C, and D.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, A through
I play-
Z, probably.
I play with
There's
some
me.
veteran. I play with some veteran players, and I learned real quick. You should always have a backup plan. It's not, and I mean, just like Renee said, it's probably not going to go how you think it's going to go. So always
Never.
have backup
Never
plans.
does.
Especially
If
the
you wanna
higher, the
make
higher
it
level they
interesting.
get to, the harder it is as a DM to remember everything that you can do with that big bad, because you have 5 or 6 players who are level 20 who just sit there and obsess about their character sheets all week until they come and play with you, right? So like trying to compartmentalize
Yeah,
that.
GW.
But no, and
Hey,
that's
good
fine.
thing.
That's amazing.
No,
but
you're
then,
good.
but
No,
you
it's
have,
a good thing. Yeah.
but that's 5 heads each individually having their characters
Gonna
down.
kill you.
You have one that has to deal with all 5. So
Yeah.
making mistakes, there's plenty of
No,
mistakes
you're
I've made, GW, and we've talked about it afterward. I'm like, fuck, I could have done this. Like when you guys were fighting Vulrock. But jumping into the Vulrock question, I'm going to talk about Vulrock in a second because it goes with this other question. Where's that? Haunted said, has anyone made a villain that resulted in a TPK? I almost TPK'd our party.
I have not. I want to.
You want to.
even if it's just for a one shot, I think it's just
No.
would be
Yeah, I didn't create the villain, but I definitely threw a party of 5 level 7 bards at a adult white dragon, and that came like this close. Like, and I was soaking it in. I was getting ready to like just finish all of them in one fell swoop, but they like pulled it out and managed to just get themselves just far enough away that I couldn't do certain things. But no, personally, I haven't yet created an encounter with a big bad that has been that hard, in my personal opinion.
Yeah.
Like I always try and like my brain always works on balance. Is
Yeah.
it balanced? Does it make sense? Will my party have a good enough time fighting it, but will it be hard enough to push them to make them feel like it was worthwhile? So
Yeah.
I don't really create villains that go above and beyond that level of balance yet. We'll see what my current party during Sunday games does. Only one of them should be listening, maybe 2, but we'll see. But yeah, no, that's my thing is to make sure that every game feels like it's balanced for my players, so that they don't feel that I'm technically like out to get them. So that when I am out to get them, it's a swerve and they don't see it coming. So
Wait a minute. Did you say Sunday? Are we going to
I
have to
love
work
it.
together instead of PvP?
no,
For
not
mythical?
you, honey.
Okay.
No, honey.
Okay, I was like,
that's
I'm not prepared to work with
Sunday.
I planned for that
big
too.
plot twist.
I in the back of my head, I was like, all right, you know what? Renee's probably going to throw something out. So be ready for anything. Any monster could appear right now out of the ground. Be ready.
Yeah, that's exactly. And then
Like
it didn't. I was like, oh my god,
Our 25
I mean,
it is
the room collapsed or something.
I mean, it is my game, so we'll see what happens.
Are you gonna be gentle to us in the community game? Actually, no, I don't want you.
Yeah.
I'm gonna cause chaos. Then.
Don't be gentle. Don't be gentle. TPK.
I don't even know what I'm playing yet. I still gotta figure that out. But
That's right.
so my touch to the Vulrock. So who is Vulrock? Vulrock is if you've ever looked at the
Vulrock
dungeon.
is my new Dark Lord.
Yeah, so we'll get to that in a second. So Vulrock is my version of Asurok, right? So the Renee, what's the spell? That
Finger of Death?
No, because Asurok
Disintegrate?
died. No, Asurok died, and his clone.
Oh,
What's the clone called?
oh, jeez.
Simulacrum?
Something like
Simulacrum.
Simulacrum.
So the Asurok that everyone knows in Forgotten Realms lore now actively is the clone of the real one. The real one died a long time ago. So in the world of Forgotten Realms, that is a clone. Ugador is a little different, but essentially it's the same demi-lich god who goes to all these worlds and just causes mischief and tries to create gods and all this stuff. You know, we touched on him in Origins of Ugador when I did Tomb of Annihilation with the Soulmonger and all that stuff. GW and them, so there's a school of magic that I created. It's almost completely done. It's called Corruption Magic. It's a complete school of magic. It has 9 spells for every level, and it's nasty stuff. So the reason why Diane is loving him right now is because she's in the Wizards of Ukador campaign, which is 3,000 years before he was killed, and she just found his book. So that's, yep, that happened. But going back to the encounter with GW, the first time they fought him, which was kind of a surprise, was a mini battle royale in the 9th level of hell or something, right? But when they fought him for real, he did some nasty spells that literally leveled the entire party, except for GW, who had would you have 10 hit points left? Something like that?
I had like 50.
50 hit points left. But by himself with a demigod archlich
Insane.
nastiness. GW killed him, thankfully, but that was the closest I ever got to a big bad killing everybody. Because that was also very emotional because GW did some amazing. That's when you did So GW did some amazing role play. He took all his friends with him. He called out to the gods and had huge surprises with that and resurrected his whole party, coming up to Anne, who played Denahi, who chose to not come back. And that was a huge curveball for all of us for that story beat, but it was pretty amazing, final chapter of this. But thinking about that in further terms, anybody else have any other questions or any other responses to almost TPKing a party with a villain? Or actually TPKing? Ooh.
April, that face.
So actually, my players might be a TPK next week. Hopefully not.
Nice.
Hopefully they'll escape. It was pretty bad. They did some things that they shouldn't have. They were up against 180 bad guys, 2 bosses, and an ancient blue dragon.
Oh.
They're only level 11. I don't know what they were. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. They decided they were gonna, take a crack at it, and now they're trying to run away. 2 of them have polymorphed into giant eagles and they polymorphed into giant eagles and are carrying their incapacitated and dead friends and trying to run away. Good. Yeah, they're trying to run away from this ancient blue dragon. And that's where we left off with the last episode. So will they survive? Won't they survive? They don't know.
Hubris.
So who knows?
Tim, have you ever done an almost TPK?
Yes, I have. I had one in a. It was actually in a lead up to. It was in a dungeon, and the party was going through this hallway. It was the tomb of the Raven Queen, essentially in the homebrew universe that I have. The Raven Queen had died, sort of. She's come back, and it's not good. But they were going through, and each god had a room that was kind of an homage to her, an homage to them. And they were going through this hallway, and they instead of kind of they don't have a rogue in their party. So instead of investigating for traps, they were like, I'm just going to throw a rock into this hallway and see what happens. Oh. And the whole floor was a pressure plate, so the whole thing just depressed, and then the ceiling started to collapse. And instead of waiting, they just were like, oh shit, we got to go. And it was a long hallway. God. And so they're running through this thing, and there was a part that they had to jump over, essentially. And they were they're like the characters or the players?
It was a joke question.
And they were running through, and they leapt over this kind of pit, and inside the pit was kind of a meat grinder, and one of them fell and got caught. So one of the players hung back to try to get that character, and then the door, which this was maybe my fault. I was like, it's a rusty door. I lay it out. I was like, it's a pretty rusty door. It's it looks old. Just assuming that their paladin would kick right through it. Just be like, I'm just going to kick down the door. And the guy who had gone to save the character who had fallen in the meat grinder was the only one who could lockpick. Like he had a lockpicking set. And so the paladin got there and she didn't know what to do, so she prayed to the door, thinking that it would open, because this whole thing, like the whole tomb was very like religion oriented. And so she's like praying at this door, and nothing's happening. And they're all like there waiting as the ceiling is getting closer and closer. And in my mind, I'm like, Jesus, they're gonna die because they're praying to a door. And like sure enough, one of them kind of like was kind of investigating the door, and I like described that like part of the door like falls off, like the like kind of rusty veneer kind of falls off, and they were like, oh, and they like pushed it down, and they managed to get through, but it was very nearly a TPK. It was
like that moment as
so
a DM
bad.
where you're like,
oh,
it's like that
there's
moment
nothing
as
I
a
can
DM,
do.
you're like, guys.
That's
Pray to
why
the door.
with my party this last week, I was like, why are you fighting them? This is an escape. No.
Tim, you are a DM after my own heart. I love traps.
Oh,
I
yeah.
love traps, and that was just beautiful what I just heard.
Yeah.
GW's inspired.
Yeah.
He's like,
Yeah, I had them roll initiative and everything. Like it was like a multi-tiered thing.
Oh,
Wow.
Yeah, it was a fun dungeon.
I have one little final thought, and then we'll have a final question, and we'll wrap it up. This goes back with GW and Realms 1. It wasn't a big bad. It was just a big bad guy that the players wanted to fight. You remember the big goblins in the Underdark, GW?
Oh yeah.
So
that was bad.
this was a scenario that was built for them to run away, right? Little mice run away. Like that was the point of the encounter. One of the players was trying to distract them and ran away, splitting the party, and ran down the hallway and then got knocked unconscious. GW was the only somewhat smart one, chasing one of their goblin friends who just pickpocketed them into a mouse hole. But these were monstrous goblin giants that were probably 65 something feet tall.
They were. He did not use minis for them.
No.
He used huge action figures for them.
They were like the really cool action figure set that has all like the armor you can put on them for goblins and orcs and stuff. So it was like things this tall. Its AC was 26. These guys were like level 7, 8 maybe. And it was just this weird scenario where like I'm like, what are you guys doing? GW's in the hole, other players unconscious somewhere else. You have Eric had 1 hit point, barbarian. I'm gonna kill him, and they actually downed one of them surprisingly. But like that was a moment where I was like, oh my god, like I'm still a very new DM. I don't know what I'm gonna do with these guys. Like 3 people are dead. One's in a mouse hole with a thief that just pickpocketed them. Like I don't know what to do. Luckily, Anne grabbed Eric and pulled him out, or something like that. I can't remember, but.
Yeah. Luckily, I was the only one in our party of 4 that had self-preservation. Everyone else, they were like, I'm ready to die right now. I don't care. I'm ready to die whenever. Let's go. And so kind of trying to get them out of that situation was very difficult. But yeah, that was almost a TBK too. That was rough.
Yeah, that was rough. The final question I do have for everybody is, we've talked about your favorites. We've talked about the oh shit moments. Now I want to talk about, without giving things away, because that's the nature of this question, what are some details or things that you can share that you're excited about a villain that you haven't put on the table yet?
Ooh. Gray. The two words. Gray morality. I like playing this villain that's coming.
Yes, Renee, yes.
That doesn't appear to like give off being able to go one way or the next, so that the players themselves constantly have to think, are we with them or against them? And that's something that like continues to sit in the back of my brain, that like playing with that morality scale, because it is a scale if you think about it. Like you put one feather in one side, you put a stone on the other, right? And you try and as a person, even as humans, that's what we do day to day. And these villains have that humanity. It's just what pushes them to make one choice or the other. So putting a villain in front of my players that has this gray morality around them and about them just makes it more difficult for them to know that it is the big bad when it finally comes around. That's what makes the twist. That's what makes when the reveal that much more, exciting, is that when it happens, they'll go, oh, I should have seen it coming, or, oh, I knew it all along. It doesn't matter which one you get. What matters is the fact that when it happens, it sparks the excitement and joy, so that when you fight that big bad in that moment, whether they succeed or fail, or, we have to save it for another combat, they're already driven to continue that story. And that, for me, is what really makes what's really going to make my next big bad.
So 3 come to mind. 1 I can't talk about because it's top secret. You guys are gonna find out about that later. Very, very special. Very special. 1, 2 of them I can talk about. So 1, very quickly, I like the idea of players having so much power, like level 20 players or something, having so much power, and can do anything, and they can walk in a town and they can be seen as like demigods, stuff like that. I've been through the adventures, I've seen the world, I've saved the world tons of times. Like, what's next? What if the enemy is not an enemy per se? What if they don't have a target? What if this enemy is as you could look at it as if you're like looking at air, or you're looking at nothing at all? Not saying that this enemy is invisible, but what if a godlike party didn't have a target, but everything is crushing around them? This town, these people, like, you have to save them. You don't know where the core is, but all this stuff is going on. What are you going to do with all that power? All of these, helpless citizens, dying around you. What are you going to do? Like, how are you going to fight back? So that's one thing that I have in mind that's really exciting for a future thing. And my third one is, it's like almost my favorite, but as Renee said before, like gray morality, we all know that when you hear word down the grapevine, it doesn't always end up how it started. Information gets mixed up, there's misunderstandings, and what is black and white is no longer black and white, but it's gray, and you still have these huge choices because the outcome is huge. So I have a particular enemy that is hugely dependent on a party's way to help, whether that means killing or not. But it's also a very special idea that I have, that the enemy is not what they seem or what you would think they are, but they are still an enemy.
Nice.
So those are fun ideas that I have that I can't wait to show you later on. Anyone else for it?
I've got some, but Diane,
go for it, Tim. Because I'm trying to think of how I can talk about it, because it's
without
super
They
spoiler.
both have brand new shows starting soon. So
my wife is probably in the chat, but she's somewhat aware of this. Without spoilers, but basically the setup for this particular potential villain, it's not set in stone yet, but like I was saying before, in the homebrew world, the Raven Queen died. She was killed. She long before she manifested in physical form in this big epic battle that was going on, and she was betrayed. And as she was dying, a priestess, one of her priestesses, essentially like opened a plane to the negative plane and shoved her in, thinking that it would protect her or at least stop her from dying. And that priestess went on to become the next kind of Raven Queen-like goddess, Nephthisiket, which is a homebrew goddess of like the moment of life and death. Anyway, so she's shunted away in the negative plane. Nobody knows. Everybody thinks she's dead. She's sort of forgotten from the world. They go to the tomb. Outside of the tomb, there was a Nightwalker, which is this huge, giant negative plane beast that kind of walks around. And so the thing with the Nightwalker is if you one of the players, instead of fighting, this is one of the ones where I was like, they're just going to run away because this thing is way powerful. They banished it. And it doesn't have legendary actions, and it failed its save. So it banished. And immediately I was like, oh no, because if you send it back to the negative plane, the thing that they come out when something gets sent to the negative plane. So when you send it back to the negative plane, that thing that it got sent for comes back. So that thing was the Raven Queen. So she came back into the world. That was one where I was like, oh no. Oh no.
What did you do?
So she comes back. Yeah. They didn't realize right away what had happened because when they got to the end of the tomb, they were like, they found that it was like, it was all opened up and she had escaped. And so she's now the goddess of vengeance. She's called the matron of vengeance. And she's essentially hunting down other gods that had a hand in her death. That's good and evil. So she's back out in the world, but they asked her for help when they figured out what happened in a later fight with Velsum. Before they went and confronted him in the city, they were like, because there's all these demons, like he had all these demons in the city, and they were close, but they needed help because like all the people in the city had basically become thralls. And they didn't want to fight through these like waves of thralls, so they were like they asked the Raven Queen for help, and they were in the sewers. Basically, the Matron of Vengeance sent all these ravens, just wiped out all the thralls, and they were like down in the sewers hearing all of this, and blood's like dripping down. And then they came out, and they were like, oh shit, everybody's dead, like including some of the allies that they had recruited out at the front of the city.
Well,
but afterwards, in exchange for that, they were all branded on their backs with wings. These like metallic kind of looking wings. And so now they have basically, she was like, you owe me a favor. Like I can call on you at any time and you owe me. And she hasn't come calling yet. So it's just this thing that's looming over the party. And it was this like, it really fucked with the dynamics because they were all like, oh, like there was one character made the choice to do it. And she just made the choice because they had kind of talked about it. But then everybody else, once they got branded, they were like, what the fuck? Like, why did you do that? And yeah, so it's this kind of looming thing over the party that's like she's just out there and they haven't had to deal with it just yet. Yeah. But yeah, it's been
that's beautiful. Like that's the beautiful thing about D&D is they're level 12, right? Or no, they're higher.
No, they're level 14 now.
14 now. You still have plenty of time for them to forget about the debt that they owe, and then
yeah.
That is the greatest metaphorical rewording of the monkey on your back.
Yeah. And it was one of those things that, like, it literally just came about because a character like banished this Nightwalker. Like that wasn't a plan that I had, that I was like, it was just like it happened, and then I was like, oh, this is perfect. It was the narrative, as we like to say, the narratives and the mechanics kissing. Yep. Yeah.
Wow. I don't know what I can say, you guys. This is so hard. I have 2 villains in mind currently for Legends. Of course, these could totally change because, like we all have talked about in the past hour, players make some crazy decisions. But like Renee mentioned, both of my villains I have in mind are that gray area, like they have their plans and they have their motives, and the best villains, like, they don't think they're evil. They have a reason why they're doing this, and they think they're in the right, whether it's they were wronged and they're trying to figure that out, or their goals and they're just going about it the wrong way. It's so one of my villains is end game villain, I'm hoping. Awesome. And then the other villain is going to be the first arc villain.
Cool. Very
but
cool.
Yeah, I don't want to say too much though, because
That was a good
guys
tease,
will
though. I
see.
like it.
That's
guys will
great. No,
see.
that was perfect.
Starting October 19th. Check it out.
April.
Yeah, tell me about some villains.
I'm sure that you all have multiple games, like different storylines and different worlds. I'm sure you have one that you could.
Well, so in my home game, they're fighting in the Blood War. So they've sided with the Devils, and they're going up against Vecna and Orcus. They know that they're heading towards there. They did actually meet Vecna a few sessions ago, and he killed one of them, and then they like teleported out because they have a god granted them one teleportation, and I was like, guys, you can't do this.
You
Why
can't
are you
talk to
doing
like that. What are you crazy?
yeah. So that's my villains for my home game that I can say.
Okay. World changing. Just earth shattering, one giant leap. Can never see it coming.
Nice.
Yep,
Mic,
that's it.
mic drop.
Can't wait.
Petra's the villain.
The best thing that I can say, because I have two players literally right here,
Yes.
is that those of you who have watched any of my streams, I only started DMing when we did Realms of Ugador 2.5 years ago. So that was my first campaign. It went to 20, and it was amazing. I've done a lot of stuff since then, but that was my first full campaign. Biggest thing that I could suggest to any DMs out there, even if you're not streaming, record your shit. Not just audio, record your video. Because you can go back and you can watch cues, something that you do that's really exciting. Like, all of you might be really excited about it, but GW might be like, whatever, left out, not inclusive, whatever. Like, you go back and watch the footage. You will learn and grow so much as a DM, it's ridiculous. I used to watch each stream about 5 times. I have a network to manage. I can't do that anymore. But I do try to catch it as much as I can, right? But so going back and going through the footage, having long conversations with GW, post-fights, pre-fights, all sorts of things. We used to have multiple weekly conversations about just all things. Has evolved my creation of villains to an extreme level of twistedness, of twists and turns, and things that you don't expect, giving the villains more depth, giving them more to care about, investing it in more. Villains that I have planned for Realms of Ugador are pulling from Origins of Ugador Season 2, or in the second age. It's pulling from villains in Wizards of Ugador in the first age, and it's pulling from other stuff that technically hasn't happened yet in the future shows. All that lore, all the character development that we've done in all these different shows are pulling into the main show now, because now my focus is only one Ugador show. So we have Tides, you have Ashes, you have Origins, you have Wizards, and Fables, which is Jason's game of In My World, all pulling into characters that are wrapping around in the Realms of Ugador. And then I took the Rime of the Frost Maiden that fit perfectly with what I already had planned, and took some stuff from Frost Maiden and threw it in there. So that's all I gotta say about that. Like, I'm glad that we're remote, and I'm glad that some of you live very far away from me. That's all I'm gonna say about that. But no,
oh my god, my brother's gonna be a villain.
Good idea.
I'm scared.
Brother is going to be.
Yeah.
We're always
Like,
listening, guys. We're always listening.
I know.
But
I have a quick question.
Yes, quick question.
A quick one. I feel like it's a quick one. To all of you seasoned creative DMs, what is something when you're creating your villain, whether it's the big bad, whether it's just a mini boss, whatever, when creating, what element do you give them? Like, what element is a must have?
Humanity.
I like I like relatability. If both my players and their characters can vibe on the level of the villain, and that's the thing for me. You just make it feel like, whether, when they turn out to be the villain at the end of the line, I just find that it becomes more rewarding. Like if you can find something to relate to, that's what I really feel is like a hinge effect.
Yeah, I think Renee said it.
Yeah, I like thinking about that. The moment, it ties into that. I think like the moment that players decide to become heroes, it's the same for the villains. It's like it's just the moment that it was a fork in the road and they chose this path.
Yep.
And it's not like and like Renee said, it's so satisfying when it can be a thing where it's like, I can see where they made that choice. Like it's reasonable.
Yep.
And I think that helps really ground a villain and ultimately makes them very satisfying.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
So, thank you all so much for all the great questions. Thank you all, my amazing panelists. Tim, thank you for coming last minute notice. Blackwater D&D, newest to our community. Check them out. Just drop the link in the chat. Lots of cool things going to be happening the rest of this week and then later. I'm playing a game with Luke Gygax later today. I'm not nervous. You're nervous.
And Alicia.
And I love Nate. So if you guys don't know Nate Taylor, he's the creative director for Dwarven Forge. He's an amazing human being, and I'm really excited to be playing with him too. So without further ado, we're gonna go ahead and raid the next event that finally got started. They actually had some tech issues, so it was cool that we went along. So we're gonna go ahead and raid Ginny Loveday. They're doing another D&D game. I know Tito is in there, and Jennifer Kretschmer is in there. I'm not sure who the other people are yet. But go ahead, spread the Fable 42 love, spread the GaryCon love. We'll see you guys later on today for the Vorpal board, how to use Vorpal boards panel. And then right after that at 6 p.m. Pacific, we're jumping into a pretty awesome game with Monty from Dungeon Dudes is the DM. So I'm very excited about that. So we're gonna go ahead and raid. Jump in our Discord if you're not already in it, and we'll.
And remember, always create better villains.
Always create better villains. That choice is yours. But yes, so we will see you guys next time my corniness is done. But yes, see you guys later. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.